Mysteries abound around the world, from strange lights in the night sky to ghostly apparitions passing from one realm to the next. From the Great Pyramids of Egypt to what lies beneath the depths of Loch Ness. From Bigfoot to Atlantis, they are all mysteries waiting to be solved. Join Laurie Phillips, Lauren Smith, Graz, and Billy Simmons as they search for the truth on Nite Callers Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio. You're here tonight with Graz, Billy, and Lauren, and it is August 20th, 2015, and we are so glad to be here. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Doing good.
Beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Oh, Stop. Creeping me out.
Would you be mine?
I'm trying to picture you wearing a cardigan right now. It kind of cracks me up. All right. So, Billy, how are you?
Doing pretty good. Can't gripe. It's thought I was going to have to break the jacket out this week. It went from 108 down to 68 degrees this morning. So
Same here. Same here. It's in the 50s.
Yeah, kind of a big change, and I love it.
Oh, yeah. I'm digging it. Digging it.
Oh, yeah. It's like fall has got here early. I'm going to enjoy it all I can.
Oh, for sure. We're actually having a fall this year. That's pretty unheard of in these parts.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Fall is 2 days around Halloween, and then it's winter.
Pretty much.
Yeah. How you doing,
Graz?
Beautiful
over here as usual. It's beautiful over here as usual. Had a little bit of rain yesterday. Oh, my God, a little bit of rain. But it's just crystal clear and 75 degrees. And yeah, you can't argue here.
Nice.
Other than the fires on the east side of the Cascades, a friend of mine's got a brand new retirement house he's been building for the last 3 or 4 years over there, and it's right in the path. Like,
oh, man.
It's so bad out there. It's ridiculous.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. Well, a couple of 100,000 acres going up.
Yeah.
Of course, that's going up and down the coast. You can't do anything about that. I mean, it's everywhere. They actually had to bring out 200 of the regular infantry from down at the base down south of Tacoma, Fort Lewis. They had to do a quick training to be able to get them together. And they sent them up in buses today to go up there and start working. That's getting pretty bad. The governor's gotten a hold of the whatever the name of that administration in Washington is, so to get some money.
I wonder if the Sasquatch sightings around the outer parts of that go up whenever there's fire.
Well, somebody just posted somebody on the fire line, first day on the fire line, he's got a Bigfoot print. And there he is in his boots and his red Nomex or whatever it is that they wear. And right next to it is a Bigfoot print. And that's kind of interesting. But you got to figure that they're on the run.
Well, yeah. I mean, I bet there's an influx in other areas that aren't getting hit by the fire. So, pretty interesting.
It's on the east side of the mountains from California north is all desert, mostly. It's high desert, and it's really dry, so there aren't too many squats, but there's enough. There's a lot of people do research on the east side of the Sierras and the Cascades. It's not as much as on the west side where the rainforest stuff are. That's one of the things everyone talks about is watch on that side. And what do they do when all the fires come? They got to go somewhere.
I always wonder what a Squatch did during a tornado.
Same thing I do, hunkered down.
I guess, but where? Like a riverbed?
Grab hold of
tree?
cedar and hold on.
I mean, I know they can probably sense it, sense it coming and vacate the premises, but I don't know. I've always wondered, I guess what every other wild animal does, which I have no idea what they do either, so. Sue me.
Well, our wonderful
Anyway.
Lori is not showing
right.
up tonight.
Well, let's see. Oh, yes. Lori will not be with us tonight. She is not feeling well. So, anyone wants to send some prayers her way, they would be very welcome. She will recover. However, she's just under the weather and stuff like that. So,
she wanted to come on, but she's under the influence, and it might have been an interesting show.
She's under some pain meds, and I, politely but sternly told her no, because she would probably, be telling our guests that Bigfoot was sitting beside her giving her a foot massage or something. So we're giving the boss lady a night off tonight, and but I would like to see if this number is our guest, if y'all want to.
Want me to click on
714? Is that you, Shane? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, that's what happened last time I tried to click on it, so I guess that's not Shane.
I guess. Shane, if this is you, call back in and press 1 and it'll make you show up. All right, that's weird. I hope our guest is okay. He hasn't called in yet, so.
Shane is in no show, so if anyone wants to call in and say hi, if you have any news stories to tell.
Yeah, so if you want to call in and share your experience or talk about any new happenings, the guest call-in number is 347-989-0313. So feel free to call in and we will get to you. So, anything else going on in y'all's areas?
Yeah. There's
Not
a
really.
doctor, what's his name? I would call it my area because he comes up here every once in a while. That's turned into a big hoo-ha all over the internet about the dimensional squatch. Everyone's making a big noise about it. I've been trying to keep it out of the Bigfoot under the radar room.
I saw something about that, but I didn't know what was going on. What exactly is going on? Is he just starting drama in the chat room? Like, should other chat rooms watch out for this individual?
Well, I tell you, Soha, I think they call the group, SOHA or something like that. I've been ignoring it. I've been just totally ignoring it. So Dr. Matthew Johnson, I think his name is. And I don't know if you've heard about it, where he had a meeting up here in Bremerton, which is on the other side of the Puget Sound from me. I was tempted to go to it. It was supposed to be for squatches. Bob Gimlin showed up, and it was just a conference. One of the local guys put it together over there in Bremerton. He showed up and gave his presentation, and he basically went batty. And it's a YouTube video that somebody put on. And he started talking about portals, and every time you shine your flashlight on it, it would shut off, and you turn the flashlight off, and it would pop back on again.
Fun.
You got two mini squats, one on either side of it, that were guarding it with glowing red eyes. Two little tiny mini squats guarding it with glowing red eyes. And they're talking to him and psychic information and stuff. And he went on and on and on about that. It's all over the It's turned into a big, big argument, big mess. And I'm not a drama kind of guy. I just kicked somebody out of the Bigfoot under the radar for starting drama about Stroifer's group down there. Was that the Bluff Creek Project? He was making a lot of noise about that. I won't say his name, but he's been posting videos about, how the Bigfoot project has gone down, has taken Bluff Creek down the tubes and all this kind of stuff, and drama. I'm tired of the drama.
Just drama, yes. That seems like the community's, just made up of that, and it's amazing if they helped each other half as much as they wanted to hurt each other, it'd be amazing where this research and the topic can go, but
I know. Talk radio shows that are popping up all over the place in competition with each other. They should be friendly. Everybody should be talking to each other. Hi, how are you? Yeah. Getting along with each other. And sharing information. It's a hobby. It's a freaking hobby.
Yeah.
And they turn it into this competition thing. There's always a Hitler. No matter what kind of group you're involved with, there's always a Hitler somewhere. You've got to come along and try to take over the rest of the world. Or make everybody think in their way or research in their way. You're not researching right.
Yeah.
You're not researching right.
It is really, really frustrating. It is, we have people that have commented on our show recently, telling us to do this or this, and some of their stuff is just pretty rude, and I understand in this business you have to have a tough hide. If you're going to, put yourself out there for the masses, you have to have a tough hide. I get that. But some of these people, the stuff they post is, they wouldn't say it to my face, or whoever's face. I don't know, I guess my mama raised me better. That's rude. It's rude to naysay someone's, or private message. Don't put it on a public page, because I'm going to delete it. I'm sorry. That's going to happen.
Well, I kind of figure that in any hobby, there are people out there collecting doorknobs who can't get along.
Yeah.
And 90% of the people are having a good time, and they're just, going to conferences, and they're going to little conventions and whatnot all over the country, blah, blah, blah. They're meeting each other on Facebook. They're doing all kinds of fun things. And then you get the goombas that just can't seem to be satisfied just enjoying life.
Yeah.
But then, you get people like Billy who just sits back and smiles and has a glass of...
You're right.
Since I don't drink, I have a hard time remembering that stuff. What is... Jim something or other?
Yeah, something or another.
Did you say Jim something or another?
Yeah, close enough.
There's not a whole lot of options.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And that reminds me, anybody who wants to call in and rant and rave about the Bigfoot world, we can have some comments about it. Yeah.
Or if anybody wants to call in and share their experience, we are happy to hear from you, as our guest is having technical difficulties, apparently. I really feel like our guest is the person on the line, but they don't seem to be answering when we talk to them. So, Nite Callers is having technical difficulties tonight. Oh my gosh. After this week has been just hell. And so this doesn't really surprise me, although I just do want to apologize to our list that y'all are having to listen to us bluster and grandstand to kill time until our guest gets here. I do apologize for that. I'm sorry that my bad week has transferred over to everybody else, apparently.
Well, that's
this
just
mama needs a drink.
That's just
I need
happens.
some of that Jim something or another.
Jim something.
Head gum. Somebody drink something for me.
Well, that's just the joys of doing a live show.
Yeah.
Things happen, and that's how it is. We just
that is it. It's it's a live show. If we were pre-recorded and edited to death, and just we could find another guest real quick and get on there and, but live show, this is how it goes. Just like we got our prankster last week, that's live show. Other shows would have edited that out, but we can't. So, although I thought that one was pretty funny, just, could you believe what Hitler did was right or wrong? I'll never forget. Go ahead.
He should have wanted to call in this week. We could have debated him on it.
I know. I mean, he could have been serious. He could have really wanted to know.
Maybe you could channel Hitler's ghost.
Ooh. There you go.
The person who put that picture in, I'm looking at it right now, is Neil Laidler. And he's on the fire line out there. And there's a picture of a Bigfoot footprint right next to his boot. It's really large one.
Huh.
Pretty clear. Yeah. And Shane Carpenter didn't make it tonight.
So, anyone in the chat have any ideas on what y'all want to hear tonight? Because your options are Graz yodeling, Billy getting real drunk on that Jim something or another and recounting glory days, or me recounting every pregnancy symptom I have, which would bore y'all to tears. So, somebody take pity on us and call in, or bring up a topic to talk about. You can ask any question in the chat, not any question, but Bigfoot related. Ask a question in the chat of the host, and we can make this show about us tonight. We can let you hear Graz's first encounter and Billy's, and I haven't had one, but
Lori 103, Graz yelling and Billy drinking.
They want you to yodel, Graz. That's the consensus. Sorry, bud.
Well, I don't know where she got that idea. I can do pretty good Ethel Merman, but yodeling, no.
I didn't know you could yodel either. That's pretty impressive.
Isn't it, though?
I know you can put away a lot of prune juice, but that's not the only talent I knew you had.
That's a rumor that Billy started.
Prune juice?
That's true.
Oops, hold on.
Bluff Creek Trail Camera Project, summer of 2015. Click here to support. What is this? Another camera project. And has anyone been ready to give up on game cams yet? I still don't understand people using game cams. The Olympic project, I had a little bit of an argument with a certain person who shall remain nameless, who's in charge of that Olympic project up here about game cams.
We've actually had the Bluff Creek people on our show before. I believe it was Lone Star Radio when we had that going. And, they catch a lot of awesome stuff on there that's obviously not Bigfoot, but they catch a lot of wildlife on there that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I'm looking at a video of some of the cougar sightings here so far.
Some of what?
Cougar.
Cougar. Oh, I thought you said kudu. I'm like, pretty
kudu.
Sure that's in Africa.
Oh, it's down in Louisiana.
Mbell wants to know, has anyone ever tried modeling clay to collect fingerprints?
Modeling clay.
Modeling clay. I feel like the Bigfoot would know it was a setup,
No, we're talking about before. In other words, putting modeling clay on an item that you're leaving out there, and they pick the item up and they leave fingerprints, that kind of thing on it. Some people have taken shipping tape and wrapped it around branches, and that the fingers stick to it and leave impressions on it, fingerprint impressions on it, or different other ways of getting fingerprints. Like peanut butter jars, they pick them up, they leave scooping fingerprints out of them. Well, modeling clay, I hadn't heard about that one. I wonder how you would go about that. Like wrap a peanut butter with modeling clay or something like that? What are they saying? What are they discussing? I can't bring chat up. I'll let Billy take over on it.
That's a new one on me. I haven't heard anything about doing it that way, and I would like to hear something or read something about it, but no, that's a new one here.
He says just a block of fresh clay.
Yes.
Just leave it out there like a gifting site and just leave it there, and hopefully they pick it up.
Yeah, but they're probably going to try to eat it, and I feel like it'd make them sick. Well, okay, I'm sorry. I just worry about their...
There's only certain kinds of clay that they'll eat, and it's got lots of minerals in it. This is one of the things that Tim Stover, when he was out floating around on a boat one time out there at his out that lake in his West Bank, and he was floating around on a lake, and came along a bank of a small inlet, and there was this really beautiful clay bank there, and had a ton of footprints and handprints in it. Now that would have been perfect to just slice out a block out of there, but
yeah,
I think that they were in there, kind of like some other. And this is just a theory of mine. Kind of like some other animals that go to certain places to get minerals, and I've talked about that before with some other people. Is if they have a shortage of minerals in their diet, and animals, and this might include, primates, might include Bigfoot, that they might, go into clay layers and just dip in a little bit and get their minerals out of them. That was some beautiful footprints and stuff in that place.
Yeah. I mean, I could see them. I mean, I know pregnant women sometimes eat clay, and I know there are humans that eat clay for the minerals. I used to have a friend that her husband's family, female family members, would bake the clay and then eat it. So,
what?
Yeah, it was, yeah. They needed the minerals out of it, and it was just, and they say if pregnant women, just FYI, if you do crave clay or something unnatural like starch, like cornstarch or anything like that, to see your doctor, because it's a medical condition. But I do know there are people out there who eat clay in their families. They just bake it and eat it. So it actually wouldn't be too far off, I don't think, for the staff to go find, what their body's craving.
You haven't been getting those urges lately, have you?
No.
Just checking.
I did crave Taco Bell today, which I'm pretty sure is more unhealthy than clay, but, I resisted temptation and had pizza because I'm so healthy.
I don't know which would have been better for you. Pizza had more clay?
It was quick. I'm a full-time working mom. What can I say? But,
it's not.
I wonder. Go ahead.
It's not minerals. Salt is a big attractant for a lot of animals out there.
Yeah, it's true.
So that, I don't know, it might have some possibilities, but salt is something I would suggest, a salt lick of some kind. I can't think of any animal that won't hit a salt lick.
That's true.
And if you think about it, okay, I'm in the cattle business, and those cows will come around, and funny as it sounds, but they'll get around the front end of that tractor, and they'll lick the grease off of it. Why? Because it's the salt that's in that grease that they want, the salt. So, I don't know, that might be something I might try too, is some type of a, lack of a better term, a salt lick out there in the woods to see if there was any activity on it. You do it for deer and for, every other type of animal out there. So that might be a little experiment for me sometime coming up.
Be careful, you're going to have some pregnant women coming up there licking your salt lick.
I don't mess with them. It's too moody. I stay quiet and say, yes, ma'am.
Well, Billy, you would know.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
Oh, man. Oh, no, I can't get that.
You went there, didn't you?
I didn't go there. Sorry. I'd say I'm sorry, but I'm not. So, anyway. Do we have any callers to save us from Billy's love life?
I didn't bring it up.
I can't stop. Yeah.
I'll do it with you later.
What was that?
Well, we got 714 there, but that 714 doesn't want to talk. Well, that's okay.
Well, trying again.
Let's see. Hello, area code 714, and as soon as I clicked on it, they dropped. Little antisocial, but that's okay. Well, no one wants to call in.
All right, well, back to filibustering or whatever it's called. So, how's life?
Surprise.
This is what I'm reduced to, okay?
No.
I got nothing. We need help.
Well, I'll throw a question out there for you. Where do you think that Squatch research is heading? What direction is it going now?
South.
Besides that.
Yeah, sorry. Honestly, I don't know. I feel like we have enough new blood out there, because we've interviewed a few people on here that are just they're fresh and they're passionate, and I feel like that gives us a really good chance at kind of rejuvenating this field, because I feel like I came back into the community, a year or so ago after a hiatus, and I feel like everyone in the community was just tired. We were spinning our wheels. There was really just no new research that I could tell, and so I feel like now, I don't know, these new people they're fresh, and I think that gives us a shot.
Well, it's been...
I think it depends on what you mean by new and what you mean by research. Now, we've been doing the same stuff for the last decades. And some of the stuff has been going way off the deep end, in my opinion. Granted, it's all subjective material going into the psychic phenomenon, woo-woo stuff that people call woo-woo stuff. And that might have a chance of being real, but it's totally subjective, and it's only about maybe 1% of the total that I've seen. I'm throwing the number out there, about 1% of the total.
Right.
And just like in politics, it's the extremes that get the press, and it gets people up in arms a little bit. But as far as new research, there's definitely some new stuff going into cultural realms as far as Bigfoot is concerned. They've been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Who knows how long they've been in America? But they've been around long enough to have had built up family units and cultural things. They might some of them are actually possibly using tools. There's some research going into that area as far as them actually flaking off pieces of rock and making tools. So there's different angles to it that are new. Some people trying to figure out stick structures, and that they're actually seeing things that they call them different things. They call it script, they call it stick figures, they call it symbols, different symbols on the ground. Mm-hmm. And some are saying that some of it has to do with Ogham, some have different languages floating in and out over time, cultural influences from what we call them Indians, some people call them Native Americans. There's different conversational things that people are picking up from their language that they're hearing in the chatter, that they actually have a cultural language. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of new research that wasn't done before. I mean, everything started, decades ago, right. And new things are being added to it. So there's a lot of different angles that are intriguing, and some of them are damned exciting.
Right, that's very true.
Well, I was going to say, Graz, this has never come up between us, even, off the show. What do you think that they are? What is your take on it?
That's true.
Me.
Graz's standard questions.
My opinion. You want my opinion?
Yeah.
Considering that there's different types of hominids, humanoids, whatever you want to call them, all around the world, going back for several 100,000 years, that they're finding all these skeletons all over the place. They're trying to put it on a tree. There is no tree. There are different types of primates all over the world that I think got started back when everything was what they call the Pangea. And that when the continent separated out, one common species or a couple of different common species that had the right potential grew over time into all these various primates. Humans came out of one variety. Neanderthal came out of another one. Heidelbergensis, I never could say that word. All the different types came out of different ones that had all the same potential. There are different types of almasti and all these different types around the world that they're trying to connect together in certain ways. I think Bigfoot is many different types coming from certain potential common primate types. And I don't think there's any, I think each one, like the Florida Bigfoot is different from the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot, is different from the Yeti, and different from the Almasti, and different from the varieties around the world that everybody has been talking about. They're all different.
Right.
They have certain things in common, just like we have certain things in common genetically with the chimpanzees and the gorillas and different other types of apes, but there are all kinds of other primates. I mean, granted, we have a certain, like 75, 85, 95 something percentage of DNA points between us and other primates, but we have those kind of DNA points with other types of animals around the world. So there is no tree, tree that anybody came from a certain atom. They call it a potential atom, DNA atom, DNA Eve, genetic Eve. I don't think that exists. I think like Lucy and all the ones that they bring up were their own source that came out into other branches, but not necessarily human. And that was a long explanation, but that's pretty much about it. Where's Kenny?
History with Graz.
See, my take on it's a little shorter. When I first started in this, And when I saw my first ones, what I saw I took to be more ape, including in the face. What I saw, there were no defined human characteristics. It looked, something Planet of the Apes to me. And since I've been doing this, I'm starting to kind of branch over toward the Neanderthal thing a little bit. So my explanation is surely not as long and drawn out as Graz's, but
my brain
it's all good. Yeah, well, it's all good, brother. I still have, really have no idea, but things started clicking, a year or two ago, and I was kind of, like I said, veering off a little into the Neanderthal type of thing. So I don't know. I really don't. What about you, Miss Lauren?
Honestly, I mean, I can speculate and I can say, just from accounts, but until I have my very own sighting, I don't want to, say, because I've heard accounts where they're more human. I've heard accounts where they're more ape. I've heard, just the wolf fan. I've just heard, and there's so many different types of species. There's so many different subspecies for the Squatch, and I don't feel comfortable saying, oh, you know what, they're definitely a species of cavemen that, didn't die out. I don't know. I don't want to put a label on them until I can have a sighting, and even then it's so hard because, like I said, there's so many different species. So there's my duck and cover for the night.
Well, looks like we
that
got
was my answer without giving an answer. You're welcome.
There you go.
But,
I'm going to click on one of these phone calls and see what happens here.
Okay, sounds good.
Area code 540. What's up?
Is it me?
That's
It's
you.
Oh, hi. I was just listening, but and I don't even know. I just started listening, so I really wasn't privy to what you were all talking about.
That's okay. I just thought I'd give it a shot, and I thought maybe you might be calling in for a question. So what I'll do is put you back on hold, and you can continue listening.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And the other number is a Texas number. That's not Lori's number.
And
they don't have a question. Yeah, well, I don't know. 563-5340. That's not Lori's number, is it?
It might be Mark, someone's phone that she knows. God, I'm awful. You should try it. You might have a question.
Let's see what happens.
Hello,
area code 936.
Yes, this is James Hendrix. I thought I'd drop in on y'all tonight.
Hello. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Just thought I'd join in on your conversation tonight if possible, and I'd kind of chime in on a few subjects.
Definitely. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I've been considering several things here lately. One thing that we've been studying, my little organization is called East Texas Unusual. One of the things that we've been looking at is something you referred to just shortly, and that is the various types that people are classifying sightings into as far as Neanderthal or more ape-like. Another subject we've been looking into and just doing a little academic research on is, I believe it's called the Bondo or Billy ape in Africa, which has only been acknowledged as a species in the early 2000s or mid-2000s, and it has some very interesting characteristics. For instance, it tends to walk bipedally. They do employ some tree slapping. They generally run up to about 6.5 feet tall, have sagittal crest, yet their DNA is very chimpanzee-like. And one of the things that's intrigued me is the Congo has a population density fairly close to the population density of Texas. At least the as a whole does. Texas is a little bit more populated, but it's interesting that an ape of that size, which gets up to about 6 feet tall, is able to actually not be officially acknowledged until only about 10 years or so ago, which is just absolutely amazing if you think about it.
That is.
Yeah, the natives refer to them as lion killers because in the native lore, they actually hunt and kill other predators, which is also kind of interesting because you normally associate a lot of apes with having more of a vegetarian diet, but these tend to be more predatory in their nature, if I understand the research that some people have done.
Now,
Yes. Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say, aren't these the ones that build nests on the ground?
Yes, they do. That's another characteristic that's very intriguing. They are not tree dwellers. They dwell on the ground like gorillas do. They build nests, which is very intriguing. They have a lot of characteristics that are very similar to the wild men that we hear reports of, and Bigfoot or whatever you want to call him. I just feel like there's a very unusual mix of characteristics there that are a real nice match with our own Bigfoot or wild man or whatever you want to call him, the skunk ape, especially here in the South. Because we do, you were just briefly talking a while ago about types. Our typical southern Bigfoot definitely doesn't normally look a whole lot like the stereotypical Hollywood Bigfoot. They tend to be a lot smaller. They tend to be shaggier as a rule, more aggressive. They tend to have a smell associated with them oftentimes, which you don't see as often in northern accounts. It's intriguing because the shorter and smaller body size follows a general pattern with mammals in general, in that the further north in the northern hemisphere you get, the larger mammals tend to get because of climate.
Yes.
And if a Bigfoot is purely mythological, that's an odd biological touch. That everyone imagining this creature is somehow able to follow unwritten biological rules. For instance, conifer forest. If it's purely people's imagination, why is it that the vast majority of sightings occur in the vicinity of conifers and in the vicinity of waterways? You wouldn't expect that sort of thing out of something that's purely something that was a derivative of a human mental condition or state of interpretation or archetype or something like that, which is a common excuse for why sightings are similar to each other.
You make a good point. I mean, that is a good point. If we're having mass hallucinations here, then why are they so consistent,
Yeah, no one's going out and finding unicorn tracks.
No. And there are those that bring up rather random, creatures out there or whatever, but mostly, mostly the Sasquatch, like you said, the reports are really consistent. Where, when, other details.
Yeah, I definitely, I find it very odd that if you take a look at other mythological creatures, which are actually in all probability mythological, you do not see the consistency. You do not see the patterns. And I run into, because we do a lot of investigations here locally, and we generally concentrate on the southeast Texas area. And occasionally we'll get someone where they'll come in with a story that is definitely something not Bigfoot related. It was before I began official investigations, but I have encountered one person who thought they saw a unicorn. I won't really say what my thoughts are on the accuracy of that sighting. But those types of sightings are anomalies, whereas go out tomorrow, I could assemble 100 people living in a rural area. And if they were to be honest with me, probably at least one of them has seen a Bigfoot.
Mhm.
Yep.
And you can't really say that about other creatures that would be considered cryptozoological or mythical, in nature.
Right.
They do not have that consistency. That's always been very striking to me.
It is very
And all
interesting.
the sightings have, if you look at it anthropologically, it actually makes biological sense. It's not a mythology because the mythologies usually go off in different directions that don't make any biological sense or any anthropological sense as far as culture is concerned.
Certainly, it's very consistent across cultures who have no connection with each other. American Indian cultures, which don't even exist at this point in time in history, yet their oral traditions were passed down to others, their descriptions are remarkably similar. Now, in some cases, they've incorporated the creatures into their religious beliefs and assign certain attributes that we generally don't, but the overall pattern of the creature, the physical characteristics of the creature are very similar, remarkably similar for something handed down orally and then compared to modern day sightings.
Right, and you take the culture of what they would call the mythology of the Tulalip Indians up here, compare them to the Cherokee in the southeast. They have a lot of cultural things in common as far as their explanation for their Bigfoot person.
Oh, absolutely. You take
these two cultures had no contact with each other.
Oh, certainly. You take the Alabama or Coshada Indians, which a number of them currently reside in East Texas. They also reside in Louisiana. They're originally from the East Coast area around Alabama. Their legends and stories about what they would refer to as, I believe they call it Iachuba, remarkably similar to the stories and legends up in the Northwest. Yet there is absolutely no connection between those two groups of people, historically. Right. Yeah, if you go back in time. So it really is. It's an amazing coincidence over a continent-wide basis if it's not real.
Right.
And well,
good point.
I mean, if you look at it from strictly scientific, I was a fairly strong skeptic on the subject before I had my own sighting. And I'll admit, if you look at it from a strictly scientific standpoint, I feel it's improbable. But improbable does not prove non-existent. And all we need, and I point this out pretty frequently, all you need is one real case. If I round up 10,000 people and one of them had a real sighting, then the creature is real. You have to be able to discount 100% of the sightings, 100% of the evidence, in order for the creature not to be real.
This has been the battle with the DNA that they've been coming up with all this time. When they take other animals that are scientifically validated, according to Smithsonian ways of doing things, that's scientifically validated that this person exists, on less information than we have about Bigfoot.
Oh, absolutely. Now, there are species out there that are acknowledged simply based on a fraction of a jawbone or something like that, especially in cases of the fossil record, where they have built entire species around a fraction of a skeleton.
Gigantopithecus comes to mind.
Perfect example. Yeah, very perfect example of that.
They built a whole damn statue out of the thing, out of a jawbone.
Oh, yeah.
Which is laughable.
And I understand their position from a DNA, because if I'm a DNA lab tech and I get in a sample, you got to understand, you take, for instance, you compare chimpanzees. Depends on who you look at, but people claim chimpanzees are at least 96% like humans in their DNA. Some people will say 98. And I get in a sample that's 99% human match for DNA. I have got nothing else in my database that's a closer match than human. And as a technician, looking at my database, which is the only thing I can compare it to, and I look at it and I say, okay, well, this is human, but obviously some contaminants are present in the DNA.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's not a new species of human. It's contaminated by us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
so they throw it out.
It is not possible to submit a DNA sample that matches something in the database because there is nothing in the database to match it to.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not discounting DNA evidence. It's very important. It's just that our expectations that it will prove anything, I don't think are valid. You can prove you found primate DNA. You can prove you found something very similar to human, but the argument will always be there about contamination.
Right. Instead of taking all the various samples that have been collected all over the country and sent into all these labs all over those places, and comparing the DNA from those labs together in one bunch and saying, okay, well, maybe there is a species that crosses the United States that we can say, okay, well, let's compare these DNAs together instead of trying to compare it to a human.
Mm-hmm.
They might be able to come up with a new species of something.
Yeah. And unfortunately, due to one of the limiting factors that we have is due to the whole history of some things that have gone on in the Bigfoot community.
Gone wrong.
Yeah, it is difficult for anyone with any
right.
standing in the scientific community to step forward. Good example of that, someone I talked to whose identity is anonymous, but I talked to a federal employee one time who was a park ranger. That park ranger had experiences with Bigfoot, primarily rock-throwing behaviors and figures at a distance, but enough that particular individual was convinced. But that particular individual told me that in no uncertain terms, employees of the federal government that were park rangers, they did not go around talking about that kind of stuff. It was a good way to hamper your career. And so even people within it who might find a piece of evidence are inclined to dismiss it because of the dangers involved in advocating something like that from a career standpoint. I'm talking about physical danger. And the fact that no one wants to be perceived as a lunatic, you know. And so it tends to suppress what might otherwise be good sightings or evidence of some sort. A perfect non-Bigfoot related example of that. And there's a lot of controversy about what constitutes a black panther. And by black panther, I mean a black mountain lion. Any biologist will tell you that black panthers don't exist at all, period. And obviously, anybody who's met any outdoorsman knows that they do exist. The question is, what actually constitutes them? I think in all probability they're probably a genetic hybrid of some sort. But the fact is the scientific community will not acknowledge the existence of black panthers. I know of an individual back around 1980 that killed a black panther, took that black panther to an expert, showed that black panther to the expert. Expert told him, you killed a 6-foot-long house cat, and we don't examine it. Please take the house cat away.
I'm sorry, sir. I cannot acknowledge this thing that's laying out on my table.
And it's not that he was stupid or anything. It's just he knew the official position, and he knew that it would take an extraordinary effort to prove something like that. And then if you were successful in doing it, it's probably going to end up being something like a genetic hybrid or something like that as opposed to a new species, although right. I'm not totally opposed to the idea of it being a different species. I don't generally buy the jaguar argument. The reason is, if you look at jaguars, they're not all black color-phased jaguars. Most jaguars are the standard type jaguar, and if jaguar was the only source of these Black Panther legends, people would be seeing normal colored jaguar, normal patterned jaguar, along with seeing the black ones.
exactly.
Which they don't normally do. So
not too many people know the difference between the two.
Right. And, you know, a black jaguar may have a normal pattern jaguar as a cub. So, because there's a lot of genetic diversity going on there. So I don't think it's a complete answer. I think it's a partial answer. The same goes for the jaguarundi. I mean, I don't mean to divert away from the Bigfoot discussion, but in some ways there are parallels. People can
there's examples of the way they go about trying to distinguish this, that, and the other from the standard model, or trying to accept the standard model for that piece.
Well, there's some guys, Jeff Stewart and Chester Moore, that have done some extensive cat research. And anybody interested in the subject can kind of track down their writings and thoughts on the subject regarding hybridization and seeing jaguarundis and jaguars to fill in those various sightings, because really the answer in the case, I think, of black panthers is a multi-part answer. You don't have just one thing that's being interpreted as a black panther. I think you do see dark mountain lions. You see even some bobcats that have genetics, even potentially from house cats, that could darken them. And of course, some of them are jaguarundis or jaguars. But
like that one that was the one black panther that was laying out on the table would only be a mutant in their eyes.
Right.
It would take more than one to be able to get some kind of DNA category for the new kind of, let's say, species of that.
Yeah, it's very difficult to prove something like that.
It's more than one. That's the problem with Bigfoot. It would take more than one, even if they had a body.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It would take more than one.
A body would, presented in a public fashion, would put an end to the debate, but it wouldn't put it into the questions. Well, it wouldn't put it into the debate either, because then the debate would be the nature of the creature that this body is representative of. But, yeah, you're right. You wouldn't know anything about the species based on just one sample of that species.
Right. It might help in getting some funding, but that's about as far as it would go. They would
absolutely.
still
I mean,
want
things
more.
would run off the rails if, let's say, a juvenile Bigfoot ran out in front of a truck and got killed, and say for whatever reason a multitude of people were gathered around there, and it became absolutely definitive. The body ended up at a well-known lab that posted the results of the examination. It would all just run off the rails at that point. It would be absolute chaos.
Unless it was dragged away by the Smithsonian and then tucked away, like all the conspiracy people say happens all the time.
That's a whole category of things. I have debated and looked at some of the theories. My only problem with the theories regarding the conspiracies is I don't have high confidence in the government's ability to hide a lot. So that's my principal issue with the conspiracy theories. Although I will readily admit that when they encounter something unknown, the tendency of any bureaucrat is to hide it. So
right, like the alleged 10-foot skeletons that were found in the mounds and all that kind of thing.
Well, the giants are an interesting tie-in, which, of course, opens a can of worms.
Right. What's buried in those humans or Bigfoot?
Exactly. So, are these giant humans, or these Bigfoot? If you look back at, I believe it's Leif Erikson's expedition, some people interpret some writings from his expedition to be Bigfoot-related. Hard to say with so long.
Daniel Boone, anecdotal information, things like that.
Oh, absolutely. I can't remember now his term he used for the Bigfoot that he had mentioned killing. Can't remember right now what that term is off the top of my head. But, there are stories out there. Stories from the 1820s, 1830s of hunting parties that tracked down and captured or killed, something. the stories have been there. Of course, nobody called it Bigfoot. Back then it was wild man, and everyone took for granted the existence of wild men. I mean, when my grandparents were still living, if I would have asked any of them, hey, did you ever hear wild man stories when you were a kid? They would have all said, oh, sure, we've heard wild man or booger stories, you know. Mm-hmm. None of them would have said they ever heard a Bigfoot story. But they would have all said, we've heard wild man stories. Which is kind of an interesting mental deal.
Yeah, the whites had just as many mythologies as the Indians did in their local legends. Some of it crossed over, some of it was borrowed.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there was an exchange of ideas there, especially in cases where white settlers were coming into areas. They would see something large and hairy and consult the Indians that they were trading with or otherwise knew and say, hey, what is this? And so there's an exchange of information and ideas, I'm sure, that went on there that shaped our view.
Why don't you tell us about your sighting?
Well, my sighting occurred around 2003. My wife and I were driving home from shopping, and we were on a farm-to-market road going to our home in the Big Thicket National Preserve area. Basically what happened is something was running across a cow pasture on two legs. I thought it was a person as it jumped a fence. It jumped a 4-strand barbed wire fence, came down on the other side and ran directly out in front of me on the highway. Well, I thought I was about to hit a human being, so I slammed on my brakes. As I began to slow down and as it turned its torso, it didn't turn its head to look at me, it turned its torso to look at me, I realized that this doesn't look like a person, and it went down to all fours. And across in front of my van. Later on, I went back and took some measurements, and my wife estimated how long it took to cross the road. I estimated it. I averaged those, and I think it was moving about 30 miles an hour. Passed in front of me, stopped on the other side. It crossed the ditch on all fours, came up on two legs, stopped in the edge of the woods, squatted down, folded its arms across its chest, and turned its torso to look at me again. By then, I had basically come to a stop. And we just locked eyes with it, my wife and I. Looked at it in the face. It stood up, stepped into the woods, and just went on into the woods. And, you know, looking back at it in retrospect, I don't know why I didn't dive out of the vehicle and go, you know, like chasing after it or canvass the area for evidence. We just looked at each other in astonishment and basically spouted gibberish at each other and drove away, you know, because we were wholly unprepared to see something like that. And mind you, up until that day, I would have told anybody that asked, hey, Bigfoot's a nice idea, but it's too improbable from a scientific standpoint to be real.
Right. And that was pretty much your start.
Oh, absolutely. And then I started looking at orangutan videos, all sorts of things, trying to identify what I saw, and I never found a proper match. The facial features, the general construction of the body did not either match an orangutan or a human. The legs were human-like. The arms were more orangutan-like in that they were roughly the same length as the legs. It was covered with a reddish-brown hair up to about probably 6 or so inches long over most of its body except its face. Had a face similar to the descriptions of Patty, but probably more human. Very slight sagittal crest. Definitely hands, not paws. And that was it. I mean, it kind of launched me into a big mystery of trying to research the idea. And that's been 12 years. I haven't answered any questions. I have more questions than I started with.
Right.
Yeah. So
well, that's an ongoing thing there.
Well, yeah, I've seen plenty of evidence.
Every time you think you've made an idea crystallize in your head, something comes from the far left over there that shakes it up just a little bit. You have to add that to it somehow.
Well, I didn't instantly go to Bigfoot when I saw it. For one thing, not having had much of a background in studying Bigfoot lore, if you want to call it lore, when I saw something running on all fours that was only, in my case, it was only about 5 feet tall, my brain didn't instantly go to Bigfoot. It went to, I saw some sort of primate. By coincidence, 2 other people saw the same animal the same week. One of them was my father. And my father has a degree in biology. And he was firmly convinced he saw a primate of some kind. He was unable to identify it. Only recently has he kind of made the jump towards saying, yeah, this could be a Bigfoot. But his official position is generally, hey, this is a primate. I wasn't able to identify which primate it was.
Yeah, but how do you get a primate in big thicket?
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea of an orangutan is about as improbable as the idea of a Bigfoot, you know. So, and it wasn't an orangutan. The facial features, the fluidity of its movement. It's a very fluid animal in its speed.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, since I began doing investigations, I did them secretly for years. And finally, I just bit the bullet and admitted to this whole Bigfoot thing. And when I did, people just poured out of the woodwork around here. And the majority of the people that talk to me want to be anonymous. And one of the anonymous cases that I did, I think it was last year, was a mother and daughter driving down a state highway, Menard Creek unit of the Big Thicket National Preserve. They saw 4 deer run across the road. Well, closely following the 4 deer was an ape-like creature running on all fours, keeping up with the deer and attempting to catch one of them. Well, that instantly eliminates the idea of a human being in a ghillie suit.
Right.
A human being running on all fours in a ghillie suit is going to begin to catch up with any deer, any white-tailed deer running out there. And so I asked the witnesses in this case, you know, what to you did this seem to be? And because they didn't make that mental leap either to Bigfoot, instantly that is. They were kind of like, well, a big monkey. And I said, well, did it have a tail? No, it didn't have a tail. Well, what make-believe creature would it be similar to? And they said, well, maybe a werewolf, maybe a Wookiee, you know, like from Star Wars. If you think about it, that's not too bad of a correlation if you start trying to compare, you know, a fictional creature to, you know, what they saw. Not too big of a leap. The hair coloration, the hair length, all that, as far as the comparison to the Wookiee, actually made sense to me because I sat down and, well, how long was the hair? What color? You know, reddish brown was their answer. Those kind of cases, they weigh pretty heavily on you, and there were people that would not make that kind of stuff up because, for one thing, they waited years to tell the story, and they wanted complete anonymity. So, you know, when you talk to people that want complete anonymity, and you're basically one of a very tight group of people that know this story, then you're talking about people who are not looking for the spotlight.
Right.
You know, that's not their motivation. They're actually afraid of the spotlight. They're afraid they'll be ridiculed. You know, they have a real stake in keeping this secret, yet it bothers them so badly that they're willing to risk a little bit of being outed, for lack of a better term, on the whole Bigfoot thing to tell somebody their story because it bothers them so badly. And most of those sort of people, I honestly don't believe they're hoaxing. You know, it's not that there aren't hoaxers out there. We all know some that have been very public in recent years in the news. And it's not that there aren't people that misidentify things, you know, bears or whatever. But not all of them are. You know, not every single person is misidentifying something.
Nope. I agree completely.
Yeah. But it's fascinating. I've gotten to the point now where our little group, we don't have a formal organization or anything like that, but my little group, we have several of us that do investigations now. I usually don't talk about investigations before I do them, but I have a interview I need to do right now of a peace officer who was on patrol, southeast Texas. I don't really yet want to say what county or anything like that because
right. We understand.
I don't know what I can release yet information.
Right.
But individual experienced law enforcement officer on patrol saw a 7 to an 8 foot hairy hominid crossing the road in front of his vehicle. Got a very good look at it. And, those cases are convincing.
Mm-hmm.
You read about it in text, or on a website or something like that. You think, well, yeah, he just saw something. But when you sit down and talk to somebody and you catch the tone in their voice and you get a feel for what sort of person they are, it's kind of like a witness sitting on a jury stand, and you're
right.
A witness stand, and you're sitting in the jury, and you try to weigh, the validity of what they're saying and how genuine they are. And at least in my experience, the majority of the people that I'm interviewing, they seem very genuine. Very rational sort of people. I've interviewed teachers, law enforcement people, talked to some ex-military people, at least one politician I can think of off the top of my head. Definitely wanted to be anonymous.
Ted Cruz.
Well, he was cooking bacon on his machine gun, so.
That's right.
I think that was the same guy, wasn't it? But no, I mean, you get to a certain point when you can't dismiss them all.
No.
That's kind of the position that I got to, because I had trouble dismissing myself. That's really what was the tipping point in the beginning for me. It was easy to dismiss every other lunatic out there, that thinks he saw something in the woods. That's easy enough to dismiss. But when you're the lunatic that sees something in the woods, and you get a good look at it, and I mean, I took some measurements afterward. 21 feet was really, in my best estimation, the closest that I came to it. And you get a pretty good look from 21 feet. I absolutely, due to the speed that it was moving on all fours, I don't believe it was a human being, due to the arm length being pretty well equal to the leg length.
You say it was only about, 5 foot in tall?
Yeah, I had a pretty good reference point. The vehicle I was driving,
right.
The top of the windshield was at about 5 feet. So I actually had a little bit of a reference point. When I had one of the things I did when I got home is I had my wife write down her account of it without talking to her about it. Because I know a little bit about investigative methods and stuff like that, even beforehand. Her estimate that she wrote on her piece of paper was 5.5 feet. My estimate was 5 based on the fact I knew about how tall a point on the windshield was, which is my estimate of where it was when it was upright. And that's pretty close as eyewitnesses go. 5 feet, 5.5 feet for something that's unknown to either witness as far as being able to identify the species. But it was definitely short. It was no patty or anything like that.
Right. It was probably just a young one then.
Well, that's kind of my leading theory, is it was juvenile. Although I see a lot of the people I talk to describe creatures that, as a rule, and mind you, I'm talking about southeast Texas in my case. As a rule, the upper limit on the sightings that I'm looking at locally here are 7, 8 feet. The vast majority of them are around 6 feet. And I don't know if that's because juveniles are more, reckless, I guess would be the right word. I don't know if it's because juveniles are more reckless and get seen more often, or if it's because the creatures in our area tend to be smaller physically. My standard answer is it was probably a juvenile, given the fact.
Yeah.
It might have been a little bit of both. You know, you got some. I mean, we got 10-footers out here.
Yeah.
In Washington.
See, the tallest, and I've looked at between people I've interviewed and other people's interviews that I've read in my region here of, say, 4 or 5 counties. I've probably looked at 36 sightings. Ours tend to be reddish brown. That's most definitely the most common color. And while they do range up to about 8 feet, they typically are hitting more between 6.5, say 5.5 to 6.5 feet is more typical of what I'm seeing. Description.
I thought everything was big in Texas.
Well, I guess that's one thing we failed on.
Come on, Billy, back me up on this here. Everything's big in Texas.
Well, the deal is we need to start putting out, I guess, Bigfoot feeders the way we do deer here.
There you go.
Got to get some beef on these suckers.
Yeah, I got to beef.
Yeah.
And they're all bleached orange. Something's wrong with that. Too much sun out there.
You know, the theory behind some of that has to do with the humidity and vegetation and the heat not supporting body sizes very well that are larger. And if you look at Texas deer, East Texas deer, relative to, say, deer up north, even if you look at whitetail and not mule deer, Texas deer tend to be much smaller than deer if you go somewhere up north and go hunting. And
Yeah,
it's purely a result of climate.
That's why Billy likes Arkansas.
Yeah.
Even Oklahoma, we have, robust deer compared to East Texas. I'll never forget my husband. He had never been to East Texas, and he saw his first deer there, and he was just, he wanted to know if it was a baby deer.
It's a byproduct of vegetation and of the climate. And without the extremely cold winters, there is no advantage in having more body mass. There's actually a disadvantage in having a smaller body mass, which may push over time, assuming that these Bigfoot creatures we're talking about are real. From a biological standpoint, it would push them towards being smaller in more tropical-like areas.
That's what they say about the skunk ape. It's smaller.
Oh, absolutely. And I think my own personal opinion is that the skunk ape and the wild man, if you want to call him the wild man in East Texas, because that's old timers, that was their favorite term for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same creature. I get reports of the smell, the skunk ape type smell here, just like they do in Florida with the skunk apes. And so I think that if you're dealing with a real creature, I think all across the South, I don't know if it's a separate species or just a variant within one species, but I think the ones all across the South, stretching from Texas all the way to Florida, are probably all related to each other in their biological characteristics.
I don't know anything about the southern ones. That would be Billy.
Well, it's an interesting sub-study of the whole Bigfoot. I like to use the word lore a lot. I'm not sure that's the best term for it, but I guess it's as good as any. And I think that's one reason you see them more associated with wild men in the South, is that they're more man-sized.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was an old-timer who's passed away now who lived in this area that talked about the wild man that lived in the woods and stole and ate their chickens when he was a kid. They say, well, what did he wear? Well, nothing. He was all covered with hair because he lived in the woods, and that caused him to grow hair all over his body. Well, you're essentially looking at an identical description to a Bigfoot in that case. But because he was
that was some of the stories. That was some of the early stories up north too. Mm-hmm. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, where they thought it was. They were saying in some of the stories that it was a human that had gone feral.
Oh yeah, Well, and in their minds, that's a very reasonable leap. Now, unlike hogs are a good example of an animal that can actually go feral and will, in a generation or two, revert to their previous state. Humans won't do that, but they didn't know that. They didn't have that scientific understanding. So it was in their time a very logical leap to say, hey, these people went and lived in the woods, and after a couple of generations, they were all covered with hair.
Well, that's human nature, is to, if you see something odd, try to rationalize it.
Well, yeah, I know we all do it, and now is no different. And we had to be careful because, one of the great failings in the ancient world, if you found say an elephant skull or a mammoth skull or something like that, due to the construction of those skulls, it was real easy to say, well, hey, I found a cyclops skull.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
They were making gods out of those.
Absolutely. One of the most amusing historical accounts of a coffin that was found, huge coffin. It was like 16 feet long or something like that. Well, they dug it up and opened it, and it was filled with this human-shaped figure. Well, analysis of the bones later showed it was a mammoth. The people who had discovered it had thought they had found one of the ancient Greek heroes. They took the mammoth bones, arranged them in a human shape, put them in a coffin, and buried them. Much to the astonishment of some poor team that came along later, hundreds of years later, 1,000 years later, dug it up and discovered this coffin with this thing that looked like a giant in it.
Oh my gosh!
Well, that's where the griffin came from. Was from a dinosaur.
Oh, absolutely. So we have to be careful that we don't do the same thing.
Definitely jump to conclusions, or we got to cover all our bases.
Another problem is anthropomorphizing. Bigfoot.
Yeah. We tend to assign it human-like characteristics. And the truth is, I try not, and everybody has this failing, I try not to be too hard and fast on the ideas of what these creatures are like. Because the hard truth is we have no empirical data.
Right.
Now, I can't take you to a museum and show you the hall where they have the stuffed line of Bigfoots, that shows their progression through history or whatever, because in truth, there's a lot of evidence, but there's no empirical proof, which is always the killer thing in the Bigfoot world,
Right, and they're not going to be able to put it on a tree.
Yeah. So
just like any of those different varieties going around, like I was saying around a while ago, all the different varieties around the world that they're finding even now of humanoid types. They're getting damn confused because it's not fitting on the tree. How did they get out of Africa?
Right. Yeah, I think the truth is that the history of humanity is a very complex thing. The lack of a fossil record for Bigfoot really doesn't disturb me much because we have a lot of creatures that we acknowledge as real that we do not have a substantial fossil record for.
Right.
But because it makes logical sense and because the right person found that fossil and advocated that idea, it became accepted as a standard. And we haven't had that happen yet in the Bigfoot world. And, I question myself. Sometimes I think, well, am I deluding myself? Did I, misinterpret something? And I can't tell you how many times in my own mind I have gone through and reviewed my own sighting. And part of what got me into interviewing other people was attempting to either validate or dismiss what I saw. And the problem is everything that I heard from other people validated what I saw. It didn't cause me to dismiss it, which is unfortunate from my standpoint because it would have saved me a lot of time and effort.
Right.
Had I been able to dismiss it as just my imagination. But
one thing that everybody has to do with their own sighting is to make sure that you aren't extrapolating on your own sighting over the years by adding other people's sightings to it.
I was lucky. I was lucky in that I did something completely by accident. Well, it was on purpose, but my wife and I had written down our sightings and then compared the two, and they were slightly different, as any eyewitness account will be. And then later, I submitted my sighting report to the Wood Ape organization here in Texas, and it was recorded on their website. And occasionally, I go back and read my sighting to see if I've changed the details. And I think that's a valuable tool for anybody who's a witness to something that's unexplained, is to make sure as soon as you can to get it in writing and in as much detail as you can possibly imagine, and then occasionally go back and look at it to see if it's morphing, if the story is growing, because we all do it to some extent as human beings, and we have to be careful for that.
Yeah, you have to either say to yourself that I'm remembering more, or am I adding to?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. One of the things my wife is doing currently is she's getting certification for hypnotherapy. And
you're looking for trouble.
Yeah, one of the things we're going to do with witnesses who are willing is to try and experiment in hypnotizing those witnesses and seeing if there are any additional details or features that come out. Of course, that's sort of a can of worms.
Right.
But it's been a valuable tool for other people in other investigative situations.
That's true. You know,
especially a trauma type.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. That's just one of those things that I just kind of, I don't think it's been done before. If it has, I haven't heard of it, and can't hurt. Well, it can hurt your life, or the person, but I mean, it can't hurt to try it out in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, well, she's actually gaining certification so she can do the hypnosis herself on other people.
Right.
Yeah, and we're going to, whenever we have someone who's willing, and we think it would be beneficial, try it as an experiment and see if there's any additional details, because there are a number of witnesses that I've talked to that have been very traumatized, and I think it boils down to a psychological phenomenon known as, I believe it's called cognitive dissonance, and that is when you see something that is counter to your worldview, it creates a mental stress that causes your mind to come to a point where you may even deny the existence of what you saw, even though you saw it, even if it was really a Bigfoot or not. Whatever you saw was so counter to your worldview that it caused a degree of mental stress that caused you to deny the existence of that sighting. I know of an individual who's completely anonymous who that absolutely happened to. That person went from admitting to seeing a sighting to utterly denying it later. And the reason was, once that witness had a day or two for it to all sink in, their default position became, I didn't see anything.
Right, or they talk themselves out of it.
Yeah, but in that,
I just wonder how many we've lost to that.
Oh, a lot, I'm sure, because this particular individual was extremely stressed by the sighting, and the only way to get any information about it now is indirectly, through the handful of people who caught the story the day it happened, So it's we have a lot of factors working against us in doing this research. I had a investigator that I respect a whole lot once tell me that don't expect to ever prove anything. You do this because you enjoy it, because you have a natural interest in it, that you want to get out there to try to discover what's going on.
Right.
And leave the expectation of proving anything behind, and do it because you love doing it.
Right, and it's a hobby.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I do. I do it because I enjoy doing it. I don't have any realistic expectation that I'm going to be the guy that discovers something that changes history. I haven't even been able to answer my own questions yet, let alone change history.
But on a personal level, it does shake up your world when you see one. And some people aren't psychologically able to deal with that kind of a shakeup.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them become totally obsessed. Some people have actually lost their marriages over things like this.
Well, yeah. You have to. I'm lucky in that my wife was a witness also, and she became equally interested in it. So it's a sort of a mutual hobby for us now. My wife also has an interest in the paranormal, so what we did with East Texas Unusual is we incorporated Bigfoot research and paranormal research as separate entities. I'm not saying we mix the two, because I personally am focusing on the biological angle with Bigfoot. But we also do some paranormal research. If someone calls us up or emails us and says, "Hey, I got a photo that looks like it has a ghost in it," we have a Facebook group and have people posting those photos on it and all. And the majority of them I generally don't comment on a lot, but sometimes that one photo comes through that's really intriguing, and you have to say, I can't dismiss this. There might be something to it. And the same is true.
I just did a Google search on you.
Yeah.
East Texas Unusual.
Hey, don't tell them what you may find.
East Texas Unusual doesn't come up on anything. You got a Facebook page, you say?
We do, but it's a closed group, which is why you don't really find it, because we like to preserve people's ability to post things there. The best way to find it is to go to easttexasunusual.com, and the only thing on that webpage is a link to our Facebook group. And that'll allow you to find us. We're not real Googleable. I think we should probably address that. But you understand, we're also a small group. There's only 8 or 10 of us involved in it. I think I have 8 of us listed on the website. We're just a tiny group, and we're almost overwhelmed as it is already, with accounts and stuff like that. And of course, we all work for a living. We're like y'all. We don't make any money off this. As a matter of fact, it's a financial drain, if anything.
Yeah. Oh, you got some people on my friends list that are part of your group.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I invite anybody that has any interest in Bigfoot or the paranormal, for that matter, to join our group. It is a closed group that helps preserve some of the anonymity of some of the people that get on there, and of course it hinders.
I'm thinking Lori is probably just going to be terrified that she missed this show.
Yeah.
She doesn't live too far from you.
Oh, really?
Nope.
We'll put her on to our site, and I'm on there pretty prominently, so anybody that wants to communicate with me is, it can find me easy enough once they join the group. So.
I'm sure she's gonna be in contact. She's probably gonna get hit up for in the field outings and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we
I just clicked on to join.
Excuse me?
I just clicked on to join. You might see Grasshopper on there a little later on.
Well, good deal. Yeah, I'll add you when I can get to my computer.
No worries.
I mean, we just try to have fun with it. It's an eclectic little group of people posting things they're interested in that are paranormal or Bigfoot related. Sometimes we get some excellent stories, some things that are not published anywhere else. Have cropped up on there. So, and some of those people we've contacted and gone out and done some interviews. I interviewed a man who had a sighting in the 1950s and didn't tell his story until about a year ago. And those stories really intrigue me, because he was an older retired gentleman now, and he was a little country boy going fishing when he had the sighting before the word Bigfoot even entered the English language as a creature, And he held on to that story all those years and finally told it. So we've got a lot of people who have came out with very interesting tidbits. It's like any Facebook group. You know, there's good posts and okay posts, and you know, sometimes some not okay posts, but it's all fun anyway, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I invited. Like I said, the easiest way to find it, EastTexasUnusual.com, and you can click on the link on that website to get to us. I should probably put some effort into making us more Googleable, but we've kept busy. It is. I try to do a mix of interviews and field research. My goal personally has been to reproduce that first sighting that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried. I've came close. I believe I've came close, but without laying my eyes on something. To give a good example, we have an area because we don't like to give away locations. We keep everything confidential. We assign it a letter as we come to that letter. We have an area that we call hotel because it just happened to be the letter H was coming up at the time. This area was important enough to mention it multiple times. Well, at hotel, I have two daughters, and my daughters and I were out investigating, and my oldest daughter did a scream call, real high-pitched, you know, she's a teenage girl. At the time, she was a teenage girl. Real high-pitched, girly kind of call. And we got a response back from something that was such a deep growl that it vibrated our chest, you know, all of us. And we just looked at each other like, we don't need to be here. You know? And literally backed our way out, you know, because it was probably 30 or 40 yards through a Yopon thicket to whatever it was. And I've lived in East Texas all my life, hunted and fished, you know, grew up here. Other than going off to college, coming back and, you know, I became an IT administrator. You know, I've spent my whole life here. Never heard anything like that. It was a combination between a growl and a grunt. Wasn't a mountain lion, and we don't have any big cats that growl in that sense. So
that's an interesting reaction from a Bigfoot to a little girl's call. Now,
yeah.
The only question I would have is, what do you think the emotional content of her call was that made him do that?
I don't know. There was something about it, and I don't know if his response was a dominance call or a threat call. I've got no way of knowing that. Perhaps it was a dominance call. Maybe it was, you know, hey, I'm single and, you know, I'm looking for somebody. I don't know. There's no way of interpreting. But it was so deep, it literally shook my chest, that I feel like it wasn't any standard animal that I'm normally aware of.
Billy?
Recordings.
Billy, what are you doing?
It's not me.
Yeah,
Sounds like somebody's doing dishes.
I don't know where that noise is coming from. But I don't know, you know, that's an occasion where I think I've come close to seeing one. I backed out primarily because all I had with me was my daughters.
Right.
And so I don't really want to expose them to any danger.
Right.
Of course, I can easily say I would have went charging in had I been by myself, you know. Whether I would or wouldn't have, I don't think it's been determined yet. But, you know, things like that. We've done what most investigators have done. I mean, we've been out in the woods in the middle of the night and had a limb come hurtling along and stick in the mud near us, you know. The problem is you don't see the source of that.
Right.
You know, and of course.
How long have you been going to that spot?
That particular spot, we probably first went out to because it was one of our very first areas we tried to do investigations in. I went out there by myself for the first time, probably around 2005 or 2006, to actually do a Bigfoot investigation. Now, it's an area I had frequented since I was a teenager, so it was a natural spot for me to go out and look in, you know.
You think they're getting to know you a little bit?
No,
By face and whatnot?
I don't think so. I'm not huge on the idea. I don't know if the proper word would be habitation or what you would call it.
I don't think there is a word for it. Some people call it habitation, but that's somebody's house.
Yeah, I'm not big on that idea, but I can say that in that area, we have had, depends on whether you classify certain noises as a Bigfoot or not. I've had what some people call the bionic bird. I don't know if you're familiar with that noise. I've had that there. I've had the growl there. The limb throwing incident was there. So I guess maybe about 3 things that most people would classify as Bigfoot related I've had in that area that we call a hotel. I don't know.
There's nothing you could actually say, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to actually have an experience. It just happens every once in a while.
Well,
not on a regular basis.
What I try to do is I go through our sightings, and I've made a map, and I've definitely seen patterns, and I try to concentrate on investigating areas where I've seen those patterns, where I've got multiple sightings going over a period of time. And I think you can improve your odds. I don't think you can ever guarantee you're going to go out and find anything. Most of the time when I go out, I don't find anything at all. Nothing that if I seriously look at it, I'm going to consider. Well, for give you a good example, we found some really nice-looking hair on one of our last trips out. Later we determined it was horsehair, But if we hadn't looked into it real closely, it would have been easy to say, well, this is Bigfoot hair, I'm going to stick it in a bag, and 10 years from now I get it analyzed or whatever, But
what's really good for that is a jeweler's loop. Take it out there in the field.
Yeah.
And then you might be able to tell when you're looking at it, hanging on the branch or something like that. You might be able to just save yourself a trip.
I don't think I'm going out and routinely having experiences. Because I talk to guys and they'll say, yeah, well, we went out this weekend and we heard calls again or whatever, And I don't, vast majority of the time I go out, I don't hear anything that I would classify as potentially being Bigfoot related. But it happens often enough that it keeps me going,
Now, you go out to specifically look for them, or are you just going out camping?
No, I'm definitely going to areas. Well, I gave you a good example. One of the areas I provided some of the locations, the contacts for some of the locations that was in a recent Finding Bigfoot episode. Matter of fact, I appeared on the same episode. One of the areas I go to is one of the areas in that particular episode, and it's relatively easy there to find what some people would call tree structures, although they're too primitive to really be called a structure. Usually they consist of a tree that's been broke off, rammed to the ground, and then shoved between a couple of the trees that are standing, and they're very simplistic. They only constitute 2 or 3 things, but they're weird because it's been physically broken off and physically jammed down in the ground. And you can see the stump, but the stump may be 30, 40 yards away. So it's not like a cow leaned against it, broke it off, and it fell on the ground. And in some of those spots, you can pretty routinely go out and hear or see something unusual, but I can't guarantee it's Bigfoot. I mean, I've heard essentially the Ohio call in one of those locations. I didn't see the animal that made it. So I can say, well, was it Bigfoot? Maybe. But I can't say it positively was. Did it sound like the Ohio call? Sure, it did. Could I match it to a recognized animal? No, I couldn't. But I try to be careful where I make that leap, you know what I mean, to say this is positively Bigfoot. I try to leave room for error, and room for being a little skeptical about it, so I don't get caught up in thinking everything becomes Bigfoot, that particular location had an interesting incident too, because there's a house nearby, very nearby, and the man that owns that house routinely gets barefoot, somewhere around 14, 15-inch footprints on his property. We've gone out there, we've put bait, and he has his own cameras out, but we've never gotten anything. It's the very typical Bigfoot thing where you bait an area, you put cameras out, you get absolutely nothing on the cameras.
The reason I brought that up was that one of Lori's things she might have even brought up while you were here is that she gets most of her best stuff out of just going out and camping, not hunting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You go out
Yeah.
and you go out and camp and get about 7 or 8 people there, and you're sitting around the campfire or whatever, you're sitting around the camp and having some fun over lunch, and it brings the Bigfoot into you because you're using their curiosity.
Yeah. I can see that. That sounds valid.
Yeah, as opposed to you going out there hunting, it seems to be they understand an intent as opposed to fear or anything like that of you. They understand your intent and just avoid you out there if you're actually physically walking around and looking for them.
Well, I think that could be a valid strategy, basically given the fact the only Bigfoot I've ever seen personally, laid my eyes on, was a complete accident.
Right.
I've intentionally tried to see it, and I have never been successful at it. So, maybe routine
that's
activity.
One of the problems. That's one of the problems that a lot of people out there are having is that they're intentionally trying to find the darn things. Mm-hmm. Like Finding Bigfoot, the TV show, and $1 million this, that, $1 million bounty, and all these shows that are trying to actually find Bigfoot. They're not going to find it because they're intentionally trying to hunt the poor thing.
Well, television is problematic anyway, in that if you're dragging a film crew around with you in the woods, TV is about entertainment, and you have to produce shows that people see. And I don't like to disparage other people's stuff, so I don't. There's a very short list of people whose stuff I disparage, and one of them tows a trailer around and charges people to see things.
Right.
But most everybody else, most everybody else, I try to give a lot of leeway. But if I were to take a camera crew out with me and make noise in the woods, I'm not going to catch Bigfoot. I'm not going to see Bigfoot.
Right.
Because it's TV, and TV is entertainment.
Yeah, I mean they got the word out there about Squatch, and they got more people interested in it, more people coming in and giving their experience, coming forward. So they've done their job, and
I think
we don't have to rely on them for solid research. We can all agree.
I think it's valuable in that it gets the word out, and it makes people less likely to think you're a complete lunatic when they hear about you hunting for Bigfoot, because they're already familiar with the idea. And I've met the guys from Finding Bigfoot and gotten a chance to do them off camera, and they're very, very personable people. I truly enjoy meeting all of them. And I think their greatest service has been raising awareness of the idea of getting out there and telling your story, because there's a lot of people that I guarantee you would never have told their story if they hadn't seen something like that. So I think in that aspect it's been very valuable.
I agree completely.
Well, that was a good last hour and a half.
I know. You really kind of saved us tonight, and we really appreciate you coming on and sharing everything that you shared with us and being our accidental guest for the night.
Well, I didn't really didn't have any intent of it, but I really have enjoyed calling in and talking to y'all. It's been great. Anytime y'all want to get together and talk, just give me a call, send me a message or something.
Awesome.
I like to try to share
we're
stuff.
We're going to tell Lori all about you and let her listen to the show.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's going to be really excited and really impressed. That there's someone someone that awesome in her neck of the woods. I think she didn't know.
Oh yeah, that sounds great to me.
But thank you again for coming on and for sharing everything that you have, and for letting us pick your brain and picking our brains, and kind of doing an impromptu roundtable. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity to get on, to learn from y'all too, and get to bat around some ideas with each other, because that's how we try to make some progress in this whole thing.
Definitely. Well,
y'all have a good night.
Might as well call it a night.
thank you. That's what I was going to say. Thank you so much again for calling, and thank you everyone for still being here and listening in whenever we kind of. I'm thinking our guest has some phone trouble tonight or has something come up. So thank you all our listeners for listening in, despite the fact that we did not deliver our guest as promised. And we will update you on our next guest. Might be Shane Carpenter from Missouri, hopefully. But we will update you on Facebook as soon as possible. So go check our Facebook and check Blog Talk if you don't have Facebook. And so let's call it a night, guys.
Billy,
right,
say
good night, everyone.
Good night.
Okay, good night, everybody.
All right, good night, everybody.